Hey everyone, welcome. It's a pleasure talking with you. As Yasmina mentioned, I'm Steve Wendel, and I'm the head researcher at Hello Wallet. And what I'd like to talk about today is the business's behavior change, and specifically how designing products to change how users go about their daily lives, how to change their behavior, how that affects the choices we make about what to build, who's needed on our teams, and how our companies generate revenue. Now, in a previous O'Reilly webcast, we discussed the rapid growth that's occurred over the last few years of products that help people take action. So, for example, products like Jawbone Up or O-Power and Hello Wallet. These types of products help their users do things that they want to do, but they struggle with, like exercising more, or using less electricity, or taking control of their finances, in our case. There are also some new products that help people do, well, rather mundane things, like just organizing their email contacts. Programs like Mailbox and Contactually are two such examples. Now, these products are supported by a vast body of new research in behavioral economics and the psychology of decision-making. And you've seen probably some of the popular press books like Nudge or Predictably Irrational and Blink. So today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you a quick overview of how designing for behavior change works, and particularly how it integrates into the product development process. You know, the nitty-gritty of how do you do the user stories, etc. And then I'll dive into how we discover the right product to build, or the right new feature to add on to our product, and what's the right behavior that we should be trying to change with that product. I'll talk about the team members and kind of what roles are required to make this happen, and then I'll finish up with some comments about behavior change and how it might or might not influence your business model. Now, I should say for this talk, you don't need to have participated in the last webinar where we talked about the ins and outs of just the design process. That talk is available online, and I'm sending out a message in the chat window right now that has the information. And if you want to take a look, that's great. But for today, I'm going to give you a quick overview, and then we're going to go to completely new material anyway. So for those of you who did participate, you'll see a bit of overlap in the beginning, but then we'll, again, get into some new concepts. All right. So a little bit of background. So the discussion today comes from a book I've written for O'Reilly called Designing for Behavior Change. And that book takes the vast literature in behavioral economics and psychology, and it pulls together the kind of practical concerns of product development to give you step-by-step guidance on how to build, how to design, how to build, how to iteratively refine products that influence user behavior. The book is currently under the early release program of O'Reilly, and it'll be published, we're looking at probably mid-November. I myself, I'm a behavioral social scientist. I work as the head researcher at Hello Wallet. And at Hello Wallet, we develop software that helps people take control of their finances, which, as many of you know, is a horribly nasty problem. It sucks. People avoid talking about or even thinking about managing their money. For most people, it's more fun to get a root canal again and again and again. Hey, that's the facts, and that's what we have to confront at Hello Wallet. Our job is to help people overcome these challenges and get on a firm financial footing. People want to be better prepared. Everyone wants to have a secure retirement. They want to be able to pay for their kids' education. They want to do these things and do what they want in their lives, but they're scared or they're busy with other things. And so over time, we've learned how to help people take action like this. And my job in particular at Hello Wallet has been how to apply the behavioral literature to our product and to find realistic and effective ways to help people take action that avoid this reaction that I'm showing on the screen right now. Now, for example, based on the research literature, instead of talking about capital F, capital P, financial planning and budgeting, of which everybody feels like this, is it a show? There we go. Feels terribly scared and overwhelmed. Instead, we just avoided that altogether and said, what doesn't have baggage? How can we reach people in a way that doesn't have that strong, intuitive, negative reaction? So one thing we did was a financial wellness score. Ranges from 0 to 100. It gives you small steps on what you can do. It's not a budgeting tool. It's not a financial planner. It looks nothing like these things, and it's intentionally so. So we did a randomized control trial. We did experiments, as you say, and found that just this little widget helped people save hundreds of dollars more the first time that they saw it. And so this talk in the book draws upon the research literature. It draws upon our practical experiences over the last 4 years doing this work at Hello Wallet. And I've also had the great joy and opportunity of talking with dozens of other companies in this space, learning from them, swapping notes, etc. So a lot of this is really building on their shoulders and what's being done in the field above and beyond what we're doing just at Hello Wallet. So with that introduction, I want to get started. And we're going to talk about how the process of designing for behavior change actually works, what this means. But as I go along, I just wanted to remind you, please feel free to shoot over a question, or if there's something that's unclear, just go ahead and put it in the chat window. I would love to answer your questions. I'll be pausing at the end of each major section to answer, and then there'll be some time at the end. So please go ahead and ask as I'm talking. Okay. Alrighty. So what does this mean? What does designing for behavior change mean for a business, or for that matter, for a nonprofit? First, well, you have to decide whether this whole thing is relevant to your company, right? And to the types of user problems that you like to solve for your users. Now, there are two big categories of products where designing for behavior changes is really quite essential. There are obvious cases where the users buy your product because they want to change something, right? So everyone knows that a Nike Fuel Band or a Jawbone Up is designed to help them exercise more. That's why they buy it. That's why the product exists, etc. O-Power and Hello Wallet are two other examples where our stated purpose is behavior change. It says so on the website. That's what we're about. We're about helping people change their spending and savings behavior. O-Power, similarly, their stated purpose is decreasing energy usage. As Chris Reed, a great guy from Adaptive Path, says, behavior change is the value proposition of these products. And for the company, the bottom line is simple, right? The ability to change behavior drives sales. But there are also less obvious examples. That's when the people buy your product for some other reason, but they need to change their behavior in order for the product to actually be successful. So, for example, people buy Rosetta Stone because they want to learn a language. But in order for that to work, in order for Rosetta Stone to actually deliver on its promise to users, there's a lot more that needs to happen. Users need to form a habit around regularly practicing the language. They need to find new conversation partners, etc. That's behavior change. That's what we're talking about here today. It doesn't say so on the package, but without that change in user behavior, the product and the company would flop. It wouldn't work. And the same thing is true for software like Mailbox or Contactually that helps people manage their email contacts or Speak, which provides a novel way to do conference calls. Each of them entails changing routines and habit in order for the software to really work. And for the company, the bottom line is this. You get increased customer satisfaction, you get repeat purchases, you get viral growth, if and only if you're able to change users' behavior, again, voluntarily, in ways that they want to do. But you have to help them. Now, this category of product, the second one of helping people use the product better, it's huge. In fact, it's much larger than the obvious cases where behavior change is the explicit value proposition of the software. I mean, as I look around, I think that most of the interesting products out there, anything from a word processor to Twitter, entails users changing their routines and behavior in ways that increase the value of the software. So think about your own product for a moment, whatever you guys are working on. How would your users need to change their behavior in order for them to get what they want from your software? And if you want to type some examples in the chat window, that's great. Just think about it for a second. What do they need to do differently about their lives after they've bought your software that'll make them actually say, yeah, wow, this is great. This is great software. That's the behavior change task. that you have ahead of you if you're in that type of, if you're delivering that type of product. Now, with that understanding of where behavior change is relevant, let's talk about how it actually works in practice. So, designing for behavior change entails 4 phases. Understanding how the mind makes decisions, how this whole thing works. Discovering the right behavior to change based on your understanding of the mind and, of course, based on your understanding of your users. Then designing the product or feature around that behavior. And then finally measuring the product's impact and refining it over time. These 4 processes layer on top of, but they don't replace, your existing product development process. In other words, you can use an agile process. You can use a combination of lean and agile methods. It's what we do here at Hello Wallet, for example. Or you can even use a sequential development process, what's also known as a waterfall. Because at each point in these development methodologies, there is there's a stage where you understand, there's a stage where you discover, there's a stage where you actually design, and there's a stage where you refine, even in a sequential model. And you can slot in these 4 phases as appropriate for that methodology. But in order to make things a little more concrete, here's an example of what happens when you design for behavior change in an agile plus lean development shop, drawing on our own experiences. Now the dots represent the outputs from designing for behavior change at each step along the way. In this agile lean environment, the first 2 phases, understanding and discovery, are part of the initial product planning and the market research process. They give artifacts that help the team understand the vision, the need for the product, etc. We'll talk about those 2 steps in greater detail shortly, so I won't go into too much of that now. But after those 2 steps, as we get into the design process, then the team develops a user experience map or journey map that summarizes the behavioral plan. What actions the user is projected to take, how they interact with the software, and their projected experiences along the way. So, for example, you can think of an exercise product. Users with no prior experience at the gym will be given a free membership at work and be encouraged to try out a beginner class through the app. That's a simple journey that these folks will go through, at least for the beginning part. The behavioral plan you then convert into user stories in an agile world, descriptions of what the product should do from the user's perspective. So, for example, as a user of this gym program, I want to know what level of expertise and physical activity is expected of me. And the unstated aim there, of course, is so I don't look like an idiot when I go to the gym and everybody else is doing this fancy stuff and I don't know anything, right? That's a story from the user's perspective that you want to be able to answer with the product. After you have those user stories, we're really in the basic product development process then. You generate interface designs, mock-ups, wireframes, etc., and you incrementally turn those into a new product or new features, starting with the minimum viable product. During the refinement phase, of course, that's when you measure, does this whole thing work? What's happening? Where can we improve? And you repeat. You might generate new user stories. You might pull existing ones from the product backlog. You might reevaluate the core vision, and you might even pivot because of these behavioral understandings. Now, in the previous webinar, we spoke about especially the design and refine and some of the understand part. And so today, we're going to cover what we missed. We're going to focus in on the part that's most relevant for companies in the initial planning, which is discovery. And we'll also give an overview of the understanding phase to kind of orient folks. There's much more that you can get into, of course, in the book, as well as in the previous webinar. Both of them just follow the same structure of 4 parts. But let's get to that. So to understand this process, well, what's the goal of designing for behavior change? Well, you want people to take action, right? But what does that mean? What's required for someone to take action? Well, there are 5 cognitive processes that must occur in order for a person to take action. They are a cue, an intuitive reaction, a conscious evaluation, and an assessment of the ability and the timing of action. That's the understand part of the process. So let me give you an example to kind of make these 5 steps real. Let's say you're developing a brand new social network, right? We often talk about Twitter and Facebook as such, as a habit, as something deeply ingrained in people's lives. And that is absolutely true. Well, let's say you're developing a new one. You don't have that habit in place. What happens before people build the habit of obsessively checking every 2 minutes just to see if they got a message, right? What happens before that? Well, let's imagine 100 people on 100 couches, all watching TV or video online. Each of them has downloaded your app to their phone, but, well, they haven't really used it much, right? And they haven't really connected with other people. The value proposition of your app, which is connecting with other people online, isn't one of behavior change per se, right? But it requires a change in people's daily routines for people to actually benefit from your new social network, for people to really use this thing. So why would these 100 people lying on their 100 couches log into the app and post an update about themselves? Well, first, they need to think about the act of logging in first. Something needs to cue them. So that can be something in their environment that raises the idea. Let's say they all get a push notification on their phone that says one of their friends had just posted something new to this new social network. Now, once they see that notification, i.e. the cue, their intuitive minds have a blazingly fast and automatic reaction. That's what Malcolm Gladwell talks about in the book Blink. This reaction will activate other ideas. It'll trigger an emotion. Do they like the person who sent the message? Do they have a good experience the first time they use the app? Now, if they don't have an immediately discard, I don't like this thing, then it can bubble up into conscious awareness. Now, the conscious mind then thinks about costs and benefits. Maybe it's worth checking out the network, maybe not, right? Maybe they'll put in some time, it'll take some time, but you never know what they'll find. Those never know what you find, those random rewards are immensely powerful. And that's really what many of the existing social networks rely on, in that random reward of, is there something new, is there something cool, etc. Now, if the benefits do outweigh the costs, if we've gotten through 3 of the stages, the cue, the reaction, the evaluation, then we're on to the ability. Can the person actually take the action? Can they log in and post something? Well, it depends on whether they remember their password, of course. And it depends on whether the interface is buggy and confusing. Do they know what to do? Can they actually do it? And do they have a reason to act right now? Is it more urgent than other things? And if all of these occur, wonderful, the person will take action. But they have to occur at the same time. Now, maybe it isn't urgent right now, but it is urgent later, right? Maybe there's whatever thing is distracting them goes away. Well, at that point, maybe they forgot about the notification, maybe they forgot about your app. So that's why all 5 of them have to come together at the same time. You can think about these 5 phases as a funnel, right? So you had the 100 people. They all want to connect with their friends. They see Facebook as old news. They see it as boring. They see it's something that's increasingly for older folks. But they want to try out your new social network. Okay. Well, 100 people get the cue, notification about a friend's posting. Some of them, let's say 20, they don't even detect the cue, right? They don't have their phone near them, or maybe the video is too loud and they don't hear it. Of those that do, they all react. 20 of them, let's say, had a bad experience the first time. And, they don't want to go back, or they think that the person that just posted something, well, the guy's an idiot. I don't want to go check this out. They're out. You're down to 60 people. 60 people, of them, this is cost-benefit analysis, the evaluation phase. Some of them just think, there's probably nothing new and interesting there. They're out, right? The 40 that are left, ability. 20 of them, it's new software, it's a confusing interface, they don't know what to do. They're out. You're down to 20 people. 20 people. Do they have an urgency to act right now? Well, 10 of them, they're going to keep on watching TV, right? They're doing something. They're in the middle of it. They're out. Of your 100 people, you're down to 10 people that actually take action. That happens in every product, in every action out there. And our job is to plug the holes in the funnel, find out what's going wrong, and help people go from inaction to action. Does that make sense? Great. So, what I'd like to do is, next up, we're going to talk about how you can discover the right behavior given this. We've just talked about what's required for a person to take action. Next, we're going to say, well, what action should they actually be taking? what's relevant. But I want to pause for a second and check for questions. 1 second here. Let me see. Okay, I see a little feedback on the funnel. That's wonderful. If folks have other questions about that, kind of how the whole process works, how this integrates into your existing product process, please just shoot me a line. But for now, I think I'll actually just keep on going here, just looking at the time. So I'll stop at the end of each next section to answer questions as well. Okay. So we've talked about how the mind makes decisions. Now let's talk about what choice, what behavior do you want to build your product around. So the discovery process, figuring out what's the right behavior to work on, is really about 3 things. You want to clarify 3 things. You want to clarify the real-world outcome that the product hopes to deliver. You want to clarify the actor that generates that outcome, who's doing it, who's your user. And you want to talk about the specific action that they're taking. So, for example, in the case of running, the outcome might be a healthier individual, perhaps someone that weighs less. The target population or actors might be sedentary office workers. And the action is running. We want to clarify each of these 3 things for 2 reasons. One, well, we want to tell the team what type of product to build, right? This gives guidance to the team. And then second, we want to find problems early. We want to fail fast in the lean startup tradition. You'll find that if you clarify these, if you clarify the outcome, actor, and action, you're going to bring up a lot of hidden assumptions and surprises. People are going to disagree. They're going to say, no, I thought it was about this. What about this? And that is exactly what we want. We want people to disagree early rather than in the middle of building the darn thing and people are fighting about whether it's the right thing to build. So we're going to dig into each of these 3 elements. Let's talk about the outcome part. So let's say your company has identified a market opportunity. People want to be healthier, but they aren't satisfied with current products. You start the discovery process by documenting that vision, healthier people, right? Then it's time to translate that into something concrete. How will you and your users especially know that the product is working? How will they say, yeah, great, I'm going to refer this to my friends? And you can think about it as what will be different about the world because of your product. Is it that people weigh less? Is it that they have lower cholesterol? Now, in this case, let's say the company settles on weight loss. That's the outcome. That's what the product seeks to accomplish. And some people, you might call that the goal or the value proposition. I prefer to focus on the concreteness of it and therefore call it the outcome. And you'll see why shortly. So to show the importance of this tangibility, let's look at another example. So one that isn't tangible to start with. Let's say the company has a vision of helping people eat healthier food. Awesome. They decide that the target outcome is for people to be more aware of the importance of eating well. That's easy, it's non-controversial, and it's probably completely useless. Why? Because if people were aware, but they did absolutely nothing about changing their eating habits, would anyone consider that a success? I'd say probably not. This is why we push. Instead, what the company really wants is probably further downstream. It's something that happens because people are aware. I find often, and especially in talking with NGOs, I do a lot of meetings with people applying these types of methods, behavioral techniques. I find that often they're just not comfortable talking about behavior change. And that discomfort or hiding the true aims of the product, it's dangerous. It leads to unclear goals. It leads to a product that's ineffective. You're going to change behavior anyway. The question is whether you're actually helping people, whether you're changing the right behavior or not. And so in the end, you build the wrong product. So, of course, this point that I'm mentioning applies to a lot more than behavior change. Many of us have been in cases where we're working on teams where the real reason or kind of what we're trying to do, well, it wasn't quite clear. We had some general ideas and you get into it, but the metric of success wasn't clearly defined. Now, I was a software engineer for a long part of my career, and I found that these projects are usually just a disaster because you don't have clarity in the beginning. Now, another way of drawing out these tangible outcomes is just, can you measure them? can you define a metric, something that someone outside the company can use to determine whether the product is successful or not. Again, all too often when we talk about behavior change, we beat around the bush. We're not comfortable talking about it. But we need to be concrete and honest about what we're doing. Say, are we helping people? Are we not? What's the behavior? What's this really about? Because human behavior is just so complex and messy, how can we possibly succeed if we don't even know what success looks like? And so that's why a clearly defined metric up front helps you immensely. Now, once you have that metric of success, it's time to think about the actions. We're going from outcome to actions right now. And what actions can people take that will make this outcome happen? We're looking for creative stuff. We're looking for new ideas. We're looking for perhaps the obstacles that people face. Another way you can do this is actually to use random words and see how they relate to the outcome. Edward de Bono, who's an author I really respect, he's the guy that created the term lateral thinking. I think it was in the 60s or early 70s. He advocates this idea, just using completely random words and then doing what you can from that and see how that spurs new ideas. We want to avoid the obvious. We want to avoid what seems like, oh, hey, well, weight loss, well, there's some obvious ways to do that, of course. Exercise, diet pill, food, gastric bypass, whatever it is. All these are things that we're familiar with. But there's actually a better way to do it, and it doesn't come to mind if we think about the obvious first, if we don't force ourselves to be creative. And that better thing is a smaller dinner plate. One of the most effective ways to encourage weight loss is to use smaller dinner plates. That's it. Brian Wensink, who's the head of Cornell's Food and Brand Lab, he's a really funny guy. He actually used to be a stand-up comedian, but he's a leading expert in this field. And he studied in great detail how we use the cues in our environment to determine whether or not we're full. Our bodies don't register food until it's too late. And so we aren't very good at knowing if we've actually eaten enough. He did these crazy tests where he'd give people absolutely stale popcorn in the movie theater, and people would just keep on eating the stuff. I mean, it tastes like cardboard. It's terrible. And they keep on eating it because the bucket wasn't empty. They just kept on going. They tried it with different bucket sizes, larger bucket sizes, made people eat more. It's still styrofoam. It's still terrible, right? It doesn't matter because our minds don't tell us. Now, in the case of the dinner plates, they've actually grown considerably from the 80s to now. And an 80s adult-sized dinner plate looks like a cute kid's plate now. And that's why it's important to look past the obvious stuff and come up with a range of possible actions that you might use that you can then explore and dig into. So after you've come up with a possible list of actions, then you get to know your audience. Now, this may seem a little strange. I recommend digging into the user research side after you've generated ideas so you don't get stuck on the obvious for your users. You still have to do user research. It is essential, but watch out for the obvious solutions. So this user research process, it means understanding who, of course, are your users, what do they do in their daily lives, and also how do the actions that you're proposing relate to them? Do they seem new and unusual? Is your product new and unusual? So, for example, if you're doing an exercise tracker, are they used to using pedometers? Have they used similar things in the past? Or is it the case that they've never worn anything on their wrist before since they were in high school and they wore some cheap plastic Casio, right? Are they going to associate your product with that? It's getting to know the experiences in the background of your users. As we learn about our users, we're looking for distinct groups. We're looking for a particular type of user persona. Now, this persona is a behavioral persona. In particular, how do we expect people to behave differently when we ask them to take action? Not just the standard personas, ethnicity, gender, whatever, but how do we expect them to behave differently when we ask them to take action? So, for example, a competitive runner is going to respond very differently to an appeal to walk 10,000 steps than someone who's clinically obese and has real difficulty getting around. And so we draw out these different personas and say, who are we really serving? What's our focus? And how can a single product work for these different groups? And maybe they can't. Maybe there's maybe you have to fire some of your users or focus on particular ones in the beginning. So as with the target outcome, we want to be very concrete and specific. And all of us fail here. We've had lots of problems, lots of lessons and challenges at Hello Wallet, in my own previous work. Can we get specific, or do we just kind of assume things are there? And so these are the lessons we all learn. We all try to improve on. So let's say you're trying to decrease lung disease, and one of the actions you're considering is helping people avoid cigarettes. Cool. Well, what does that actually mean? Do they cut down on smoking? Do they go turkey? What's a real metric here? Or maybe you want people to watch a video about the dangers of smoking. Well, do we care if they watch the video? Is that the action we really need? Or do they just not buy cigarettes, right? Is that the real action that we're looking for? So looking for something clearly specific, and we also want to apply the same logic to the actor. Who are we working with? Are they teenagers? Are they working professionals in urban areas? Are they the friends of smokers that are perhaps on the margins, and we might be able to pull in and have them influence their friends? Doesn't matter so much exactly what that outcome, actor, and action is, as long as it's specific, as long as it's something that the team can rally around and then work towards. And you may adjust later, you may adjust the goalposts, etc. That's fine. But at least you know where you're headed, and people are on the same page. By the way, I just saw one of the folks write a message about the Singapore government using pictures of rotten body parts. Whew, yeah, really nasty stuff on the sides of cigarette boxes. That is, it's actually a wonderful example, and Lindstrom, in a book about the techniques advertisers use to promote their products, uses this example. I don't think he was talking about Singapore. He was using a different case of horrible images on cigarette boxes. And the real challenge there is, and why we really get specific about this, is once you understand, hey, if you're working with diehard smokers, those images, oddly enough, the research shows, well, they actually cue diehard smokers to smoke more. They're effective for people who don't smoke often, who are on the margins. So that's one of the great reasons that we really dig into the actor, the outcome, and the action. So thanks for that comment. So once we have these, we have a outcome, we have a list of possible actions that we're exploring, and we have the actor that might take these actions. Now it's time to narrow down the list and figure out, hey, what should you actually build? And Raymond, absolutely, I'm happy for you guys making these comments. Yes, and Darren, thanks. Biology, that's the book. Thanks. I didn't have it in front of me, so I couldn't remember the name. Thanks, Darren. I really appreciate that. Okay, so as I was saying, we have our list of outcome, actions, and actors. How do we narrow this down? Well, I think of it in terms of 4 factors that you can use to rate these. First is impact. If people took this action, how successful would it be at achieving the target outcome? Ease. How difficult will it be for the user to take this action? I.e., well, taking 1,000 steps every day, certainly going to be effective for clinically obese folks to help them change their daily habits. The question is, how difficult is it? It's really, really difficult, unfortunately, and so that's why we start smaller. And so we take the impact, we take the ease, we also take cost, which is the third factor, and say, how costly would it be for the company, for you guys building it, to actually build something that promotes this action? And then finally, putting aside cost, which is really the nuts and bolts and the financials, well, does it actually fit the company culture? Right? It's a separate consideration from the financials that we have to be aware of as well. So let's use an example of weight loss. Creating a magic diet pill can be incredibly impactful and very easy for the user to take, pop the pill, done, but it's tremendously costly for the company to develop, and maybe that's out. Or using a smaller dinner plate. It's cute, it may be very impactful, and the research shows that it is, and it may actually not be all that costly for the company to do, but it may just not fit the company culture of a software company. Hey, those are the facts, those are the constraints that we work under, so we draw these out and say, okay, what fits our culture? What's a reasonable cost for us to build? What's actually going to be impactful and easy for folks to take? Now, there's no hard and fast rule on how you weigh each of these 4 criteria, It depends on the needs of the company and kind of what resources you have available. VJ Fogg, a researcher that I learned from and respect, he has a technique called priority mapping, in which various members of the team iteratively reach consensus on the most important action, something he teaches in his boot camp and something I recommend. And it's quite useful. For our purposes, though, a simple spreadsheet or a matrix, hence the picture, will do. You can just do per row, what's the action we're proposing, what's the impact, the ease, the cost, the fit, etc., and find what comes out for your team. In the end, your goal is to pick the best actor that makes sense for your company and your users. Or hey, fine, maybe you can't get the top one. Maybe you get there are two that are neck and neck, and you want to investigate further in the field. That's cool, right? There's no lockstep about this. These are techniques that you can apply and adapt in your own way. And really, what we've learned and in our own work and talking with other companies. But we're all trying different things. So, all right, let's see what we've accomplished so far. We've taken a vague vision of a product and converted it into something real, something measurable, like people losing weight. We've narrowed down exactly who we want to serve, and we've done some user research to understand their current needs and their experiences with weight loss, for example. We've identified a set of potential actions people could take, and we've picked one that makes the most sense for the team, for the company, and for the users. You have an outcome, an actor, and an action. And that's the point of the discovery process when you're designing for behavior change. That's the clarity and the guidance for the team that helps you actually start building and creating new product. And hopefully along the way, we've fleshed out those problems. We've pulled failure from the future into the present and said, all right, let's solve this problem right now. You can fail fast and then find what will work for your team moving forward. So next up, we're going to talk about who you need on your team and how you can make this happen. The discovery process, what we just discussed, was the biggest part of the talk. So I want to pause and just take some questions for this moment, and also take a drink because it's getting a little dry here. All right, so that's a water drink, by the way. Let me check for the questions and see what we can do. Okay. Okay. So let me just read out some of these. This is from Carol. In order to encourage continued behavior change, is it useful to do an initial questionnaire? So, for example, to compare before or after financial savings and see the changes. Would a questionnaire be considered too much work, or would it inhibit initial app engagement? That is a great question. So, wow, lots of different things in there. So, a couple different thoughts. First is a question of the impact on the user, right, of doing this questionnaire. So the act of work, enter in data, that on its own is generally, all else being constant, off-putting, right? You want to get the person directly to where they find value. Now, you may say, I couch that a little bit. If you can provide value from that questionnaire itself, great. But if all that is a data gathering exercise beforehand, and it's something you need to do, well, look for ways to mitigate that. Look for ways at helping people get to what they actually care about, right? Not just what you care about, what they care about, most importantly, most quickly. Second aspect that I want to raise there is the validity of that measurement for impact on behavior. So you want to know whether your product actually works. And this is something I talked a little bit about in the other webinar, but didn't go in great detail. And there's quite a lot in the book about it. There's some challenges in doing a pre-post survey. One challenge, of course, is the selection bias. Who answers the question? They're often the people who will be most engaged in the first place. And because they're the most engaged, they're the ones who probably you'll see the most change in their finances. But the problem is they may also be the folks who would have changed anyway. And so you're not giving a strong signal. There are a variety of other questions like that with survey research for this detailed behavior where there's a socially acceptable answer that you have to watch out for. So I look for things like how can you observe what they're doing rather than them telling you. Can you aggregate can you look at their bank account directly? It's something Hello Wallet does. So we can see no ifs, ands, or buts, no selection bias. Is there actually more money in their account before and after? And so that's something we do at Hello Wallet. And of course, experiments are another way to do that. Very powerful with a randomized control trial. And I would direct you towards, there are 3 chapters in the book that really just focus just on the measurement part, because I think it's such an important question. And I'm happy to talk to you more about that if you have particular questions offline. Let me see, just a couple other quick questions. Jen, would you recommend having just one tangible outcome metric, or are there cases where several metrics offer more insight? Absolutely. So, great question. Something we all struggle with, right? Something I've struggled with in my own work, and I come across very often. There's no absolute right answer, but I personally really look for the single bottom line metric. And the reason is to remove ambiguity and to remove disagreement. Now, that single metric, it may combine multiple things, right? You may say, we are looking at the financial health of our people first and foremost, and then where it's the same, we're looking at this. That's fine. But as long as it's clearly specified and in a priority order, I think that's most important. And several metrics. So yeah, there are many other metrics you will use in addition to the outcome metric. So there's been a great discussion in the field about the single metric that matters, and that is usually the early indication of whether you're succeeding or not. So for Twitter, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it's the number of people how many friends you add, or how many tweets you send, etc. So you want to connect a series of metrics that give you initial early good signals about whether the product is working, all the way up to the final outcome. And that outcome may take a long time, and that's why you have graduated metrics that lead you up to that final outcome. I hope I answered your question, Jen. There's a lot more, as I mentioned, about metrics that I talk about in the writing. And also feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk over email or Twitter, etc., with additional information. All right, I see a couple more questions coming in, but let me. Looks like some of them are for this and some are from later sections. So let me just go ahead to the last 2 sections. These are quicker, and we'll have some time for questions at the end. Okay. All righty. So, in terms of the roles and team members you need for designing for behavior change, it's actually quite simple. This will be a short section. There are 2 main options. You can hire a dedicated behavioral social scientist to do this work, right? At Hello Wallet, I'm that guy. I'm the mad scientist, as it were. I run experiments, all that stuff. It's a lot of fun. And this person can come from a variety of backgrounds, right? They can come from an economics background, a psychology background, political science background, because there's been a great flowering of behavioral and experimental methods in each one of these fields in recent years. We hear a lot about behavioral econ, but behavioral econ is really a mix of econ and psychology. I myself am a political scientist, and we use very similar methods. The behavioral social scientist that you would hire or work with would work hand in hand with the product manager in the initial understand and discover phase that I talked about to develop that strategy for behavior change. How are you going to go about this? And then the person would work with the interaction designer or the UX team in order to, as they develop the wireframes and interface designs, in order to deploy particular behavioral techniques, such as peer comparison, loss aversion, defaulting, etc. And then finally, the behavioral social scientist or someone in that role would work with the team to assess the impact of their product, to run experiments, to find opportunities, to refine the product, and test out new ideas. Now, in most cases, you don't need a crazy mad scientist, right? In most cases, you don't need to change the basic composition of your team and hire a dedicated person. There are people who are naturally placed in our product development teams already to build up this expertise in behavioral techniques. So these folks would then wear 2 hats in the organization. One is their existing role, and the other is to inject behavioral considerations throughout the process. In particular, product managers and designers are well suited for this, to build up this expertise. Product managers, they help develop the initial vision of the product, and they have a good overall view of what's going on in the market and what unmet needs users have, right? Keeping it relevant for them and then keeping it behaviorally effective as it's relevant. Alternatively, designers are closest to the look and feel of the product and they can integrate the behavioral concern. Interaction designers in particular, they often recognize that their role is in changing user behavior. And there's been quite a lot written about this by prominent interaction designers. There's a book by Koko, for example. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and I apologize. And there are some books that have already been written in this for designers that help provide them with additional behavioral knowledge. So Stephen Anderson's excellent book, Seductive Interaction Design, is one of those. UX designers, information architects, user researchers, they can also all readily step into this role. Now, there may be a few areas where additional expertise is needed on the stat side or experimental design, etc. In those cases, you can look for outside assistance, and particularly from the academic community. Believe it or not, there are researchers out there who would love to work with you for free to understand the impact of your product on behavior and the real world. And that's because behavior change interventions are sexy right now. Lots of new books, lots of cool stuff going on here. And academic researchers, like myself, I'm an academic by background, they often look for new data sets about human behavior, and especially large data sets that consumer products can provide. So to find and work with academic researchers, there are a few things to keep in mind. So first, you need to find them. Google Scholar is a great tool for this. What you do is you type in a description of the particular behavior that you're trying to change. Here, I'll put in, if you guys aren't familiar with Google Scholar, there we go. I'll just send out the link for you. You type in the description of the behavior you're trying to change. You see who comes up. The results are ordered in ranked order by citations. Effectively, that's a measure of how popular the research and the researchers are. It's great. So top ones, talk to them. You reach out to them, you send them a note, ask them their advice on who would be the best person to speak with. Often the folks who have the top citations, they're probably going to be too busy, but they'll know who can work with you. Follow their recommendations. Reach out to the people they suggest. If they suggest talking with a PhD student or postdoc, don't dismiss that. That is great. That's what you want. These folks aren't unskilled. They're the ones who are hungry. They're in a particular point in their career where they're open for these opportunities. They've been trained, they have the expertise, and they're looking for ways to make their mark, right? Once you've gotten in touch with a potential researcher, just describe what you're going to do. You're not say, hey, we want to sell our product, right? That's not very interesting to other people. It's not very interesting to most researchers, I'm sorry. Instead, what's the behavioral puzzle you're trying to solve? That's cool. That's interesting. See what they need, right? Often, as I mentioned, it's large-scale data sets. Absolutely don't assume they want money or try to push it. The reason is that can corrupt the academic process. And in most fields, a good researcher knows that their work won't be taken seriously if they're paid to do a particular study. They'll be out. Now, explicit consulting arrangements, of course, are a little bit different. But personally, I find those they aren't quite as productive because the researcher's heart isn't in it in the same way. And they're also quite costly. Now, as you do it, remember and respect academic freedom. If the results show that the product isn't working, awesome! In the lean startup tradition, that is exactly what you want. You want to fail fast. You want to kill those dead ends and learn. Take your validated learning. Because what you can do is you can change your product before that study actually comes out in a peer-reviewed resource. You're going to say, hey, we learned this, we've already fixed it, and we're already ahead of the game. So you look great. You know, try to hide a bad result. And also, any researcher worth their salt would never allow that. So I'm a researcher. This is what works for me. We've worked with some of the top behavioral economists around the country, and this is what's worked for us with them. It's been great. It's been immensely rewarding. And this is how actually I learned a lot of this. They're being mentors, teaching us, oh, well, what about this technique? What about that technique? At the same time that we bring to them our product expertise on how to put this stuff in practice. All right. So that's the end of the roles and team members. We've talked about how designing for behavior change works. We've taken a deep dive into the discovery process, figured the right product. And now I want to wrap up by talking briefly about how a focus on behavior change affects your business model. The short version is this. Behavior change can support your business and can either augment your existing business model, or frankly, it may leave it unchanged. It may not matter. But there are some pitfalls you need to watch out for. And the challenge, when it occurs, has to do with incentives. Gyms, are the stereotypical example of companies focused on behavior change where the incentives are just absolutely screwed up. The gym only makes money if you intend to exercise. You sign up for some subscription, and then you fail to show up, right? And you don't use their equipment, and you don't drive up their costs. Gyms too often rely on failure. The incentives are misaligned. How do we build a successful business model that aligns incentives of the individual with the company? Well, so if you look back, right, and remember the two types of behavior change we talked about in the beginning. For products like Rosetta Stone and Speak, the incentives are usually quite well aligned. And that's because behavior change absolutely helps the bottom line of the company by helping the product deliver on its promise. These are products where behavior change helps people get the value that they already want out of it. Great. So that increases referrals and repeat business. The additional revenue from behavior change augments the underlying business model of the product. It can be a freemium model with a premium subscription like Speak has, or it can just be simple software sales like Rosetta Stone and referrals. The added revenue from doing behavior change well is just a nice bonus. Now, for companies where behavior change is the purpose of the product, things are a bit more difficult. So let's break down cases of behavior change's value proposition, as Chris Reasden from Adaptive Path calls it, into two groups. First, let's look at one-off or infrequent behaviors, because that's where the nastiness lies. Consider a one-time behavior like, collecting a mortgage or open up a new credit card. People want to do it, right, but they need some guidance. They don't know all the credit cards out there. They don't know the mortgages, etc. There are numerous products out there that have been developed to guide people through their choice of credit cards. But all too often they push people to cards with crazy high APRs and just some low teaser rate, right? And they give excellent commissions and fees. The challenge is the incentives are misaligned. So for one-time actions, how much would you spend on getting good advice? Well, I don't know. If I'm getting a credit card, I don't know really how to value that, and so I'm not willing to pay a lot for it. But the value to the guidance giver of the extra mortgage fees or the referral fees for a high APR credit card are absolutely clear. You make a whole lot more money by aligning with the interest of the vendor against the consumer. That's where the problem lies. But that said, it's not all gloom and doom, right? There are lots of good ways you can do this, and it's especially with repeat actions. Now, here the incentives are more aligned because it's harder to trick people to do something repeatedly. They just walk away if it's not in their interest. Now, lots of business models you can use here. You can use a recurring subscription as long as people like the product and it feels that it's helping them change their behavior. Cool, they keep on paying. My Getting Things Done task organizer, Noseby, it does that. Cool, I have no problem paying them. I'm happy. They're helping me. Good. You can use advertising. The more people change their behavior, the more eyeballs you can sell to advertisers. Fine. As long as you're actually changing folks' behavior, they'll be happy. You can use upsell, cross-sell with that continued interaction. There are lots of opportunities because, again, if it's a repeated interaction, they're only going to stay if you're actually providing value. So you look for ways that you can benefit from that. How can you build on that repeated interaction where you're helping them? And that's basically it. We've covered designing for behavior change as a 4-stage process. And these are the things I think are important to remember. The 4-stage process itself you see in the top left. It can integrate with existing product development processes like Agile. The end goal of the process is to help people take action. And so we keep in mind the 5 cognitive tests or phases. That's in the top right. The CREATE action model, it spells the acronym CREATE. Q, reaction, evaluation, assessment of ability, timing, and then executing the action. In the discovery phase, where we're figuring out what product to build, we want to clarify the outcome, the actor, and the action. That's on the bottom of the screen. And then you can often accomplish this using your existing team by adding expertise and having somebody play a dual role, often a designer or product manager. And there are great business opportunities for additional revenue and supporting your business with beneficial behavior change, just watching out for the nasty case in which the incentives are misaligned, and that's especially with once-off things or one-time big upfront contracts like a gym, which they do, or getting up a mortgage. And there you go. I'd love to hear what you think. Folks who saw the previous webinar, I love this slide, so I had to reuse it. I love this cute little guy. I'm all ears. I'm currently developing a toolkit that distills these lessons into a set of just a few pages. It says, here's what you do. Here's some exercises you can use on your team and practice. This is what we do at Hello Wallet. And just drop me a line or send me an email. Here we go. I'll just send out a little on the chat window. You can reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm S.A. Wendel in most places. And I also have a website, actiondesignhellowallet.com, where you can sign up, and I'll send you a copy of all this stuff. And there you go. I believe we have some more time for questions. Is that right, Yasmina?
Yes, go ahead and answer these questions if you'd like.
Okay, great. So I'll take a look at some questions, but the main part of the presentation, if you guys are time-boxed for the hour, is done. And I look forward to talking with all of you through email, through Twitter, LinkedIn, however you want to reach out. So with that, let me turn to the questions and see what I can do here. All right, lots of questions. I won't be able to get to all of them, but feel free to reach out to me if I don't get into your question. One thing I just wanted to answer right now, I just saw Tim asked, is it still in draft mode? So just the status of the book. The book is fully written. It's in production right now. They just did the copy editing to fix my horrible grammar and punctuation, and it should be out in paper form in about 2 months. You can actually get the early release now at a discount through O'Reilly, and in fact, I think it's a 50% discount right now, which is awesome. And then when the final copy edited version comes out, you'll get that for no additional cost, and so you get the savings. I myself am using this to get some other books. Okay, so other questions. Might people lie about success over social media? This is Anna. Absolutely. And yeah, so that's why we particularly look at the behavior and just watching what people do rather than just what they say. Okay. Let's see. And sorry, and if there's additional information that you're looking for on that, just tell me. I just want to make sure I got your question correctly. Patricia asks, what are your top recommended reading, books, articles, etc., for designers who want to learn more about behavior science? Yeah, so I'll have a list of those resources at the end of the book, and I also have them up on the website that I just sent here. I'll send it again. There you go, and it's there's a page, I think it's the top right if I remember correctly. It just says about the research, and I've got a very detailed list of books. It's an annotated biblia, so I talk about what they do, what they add, etc. And we're also shortly launching a new site where people can add their own, give comments, etc. And I'll just link from that page to the updated, more interactive version. This one is in our corporate one, so people can't, unfortunately, people can't add to it. But yeah, there's a variety of new books out there. Stephen Anderson's is one of my favorite. Dan Lochten's book, his PhD thesis, I should say, is great and one of the best reviews of the literature out there. quite a lot of different ones. B.J. Fogg's work, I mentioned his boot camp before. Check out Persuasive Technology. He founded the field. Great guy. And I list a number of his other resources there. All right. Other questions? One second. Okay. Zara. Hello from Ireland. Okay, hello. Identifying the actors, analogous to user stories in software engineering requirement actors. So, yes. So the user stories I think of as a way of packaging up the functionality, the vision of the product, the behavioral vision, and so that will incorporate the user, but it will also, or the actor, as it were, but it also incorporates the action. So it's all of them, in fact. And I think of it as you can do that outcome, actor, and action, the discovery phase, as a journey map or an experience map. I like to write things out in long form, so I actually write a narrative myself when I'm working on this. And then you convert those into the user stories that give the more traditional guidance for the product team. So the answer is yes. Let's see. Okay. Malcolm McKinnon asked, do you have a visual framework for recording these experiments? And I assume by this you mean the experiments in terms of how your product is working, where it's effective, where it's not. I don't really. And I'd love some suggestions there. If there are any you've worked with or other folks on the call have worked with, I'd love to hear. We have an internal blog where we post the results of each experiment, and people can comment on it, etc. And that's worked for us. But I'm sure there are better techniques out there. Okay. Okay. So I'll take one more because I gotta get going myself. We have Carol asked, in Hello Wallet, is there a parallel education process via marketing to convince people of desired behavior change, or is the app educational by nature? That's a great question. So this comes down to an analysis of our understanding of what actions have actually been effective in the field and which ones haven't, right? This is part of our background research and evaluating a range of possible actions we can take. One of those actions that people often talk about is education, right? Of, you need to save for retirement or else you'll be poor and living in your kid's basement, right? And, you need $5 million, good luck. There's a lot of that education material out there, and what we found is, at least in our particular space, and I know this isn't universal, but in our particular space, people already know. They already know that saving money is important. They already know that having horrible credit card debts is important. And beating them over the head again with that, or even just kindly highlighting the tax benefits of using 401k, etc., has relatively low marginal impact. And so we don't really focus on education at all. We focus on action. We focus on the logistics. All right, knowing that you have to do this, knowing that's important, let's make it not be a pain in the butt for everybody involved, right? Let's smooth the process. Let's make it more easy to do. And so that's actually what we focus on. And so we don't actually convince people. We find that people are already convinced, but they have so many other things going on in their lives. So how do they actually make it happen? Again, that may be a particular to our experience, but I found in talking, especially with advocacy organizations, that lesson of be a little wary of an education-only approach is actually quite relevant for a lot of organizations, where we naturally think about education, but it's often something else that's the obstacle for people to take action. Let me just take a quick scan and see if there's anything else. Yeah, Anna mentioned it's important to be kind and not punitive. Absolutely, that's very much in line. Let's see. Take an example of an auto care center. This is Tim. Take an example like an auto care center where so many different opportunities and ways to think about design for behavior change. I mentioned doing research and idea after an idea is on the table, and I'm not sure I understand this one, Tim. So let me see what I can make from it. Okay, so I think this is when you have an existing product, what do you do with that? Well, in that case, let me see if I can just jump to the relevant slide here, and I can answer that question. Okay, so in that case, where you have an existing product, and you can use an auto care center, fine, where you come in and you're trying to think, well, we already have some products. Where are we doing a lot of things with our users? How can we help them out? How can we have them better use their cars. Use something like Automatic, which is this tracker. So it's basically like a jawbone up for your car. It's fascinating. How can we better do that, especially when we already have some existing product or we already have a relationship with them? Well, in that case, when you're refining an existing product, what you do is you first need to just quickly clarify in the discovery phase, what is this whole thing about, right? You don't have to go through the detailed process because hopefully some of that is already in place. Then you jump to the refine, right? You take measurements. If this is what we're trying to do, is it working? Is it not, right? And you look for opportunities. You can use the Create Action Funnel as a debugging tool to figure out where people are falling off, and you want to make improvements, etc. And then you see kind of where that leads you. Does it lead you to a pivot? Does it lead you to adding new user stories that go into the design process, etc. There you go. Yeah. I just saw a mention of Ash's book. From Malcolm, I have to agree. Wonderful book. And I recommend it myself. So with that, I think I'm going to look over these questions and see if there are other things that are common themes that if I didn't get to, I'll try and answer on my blog. But beyond that, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. S.A. Wendel, 1 L at the end, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on About Me, on just about everything. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with you guys. It's been wonderful, and I appreciate all your questions and comments. Thanks so much.
All right, that concludes our webcast. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the webcast. It looks like you certainly did, and we hope to see you in future events. Have a good morning, afternoon, or night for wherever you're from, and a big thank you to Stephen for presenting to us today. Goodbye.